Okay, this lesson is about the volume and surface area of a sphere. Um, as some of you have noted already in class, we have not talked about the volume of the sphere, whoops, or the surface area of a sphere. But the two formulas are given on the sheet. So in your notes, which is this page, I want you to write down the volume of a sphere and the surface area of a sphere formula. So the volume of a sphere formula, whoopsie, the volume of the sphere formula is 4/3 pi r cubed. And the surface area formula for a sphere is 4 pi r squared. And those are on your formula sheet. So let me briefly explain the difference. Volume is the space inside a sphere. So like, for example, if you had a basketball and you were filling it up with air, the volume would be how much space it takes up. The surface area would be like if I were painting the outside of the basketball, like the orange part, that would be the surface area. So what I want you to do is I'm going to do some examples with you and I want you to follow along. So the first one, it says find the surface area of a sphere that has a radius of 7 centimeters. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So this is pretty straightforward. We're looking for the surface area of the sphere. So S is 4 pi r squared. So we plug in the radius. And they want this to the nearest tenth, so we can just plug everything into our calculator and get an answer to the nearest tenth. So we can do that. We do 4 pi times 7 squared. Whoops. Let me do that again. 4 pi times parentheses 7 squared. And that equals 615.75. Rounding that to the nearest tenth would be 615.8. And units, this is an area, so it would be centimeters squared. And there's our final answer. All right, number 2 says find the volume of a sphere that has a diameter of 12 inches in terms of pi. So first, we're going to write down the volume of a sphere formula, which is 4/3 pi r cubed. And we want to find the volume of the sphere that has a diameter of 12. But the formula calls for the radius, and if the diameter is 12, the radius is half that, so that's 6. Now, they asked us to leave this in terms of pi, so pi is going to be in our final answer. So I'm going to multiply everything but the pi together in my calculator. So we're going to have 4/3 times 6 cubed. And that equals 288. So the volume would be 288 pi. And since volume is in cubic units, the answer would have inches cubed as the unit. Pretty straightforward so far. Now, the third question says the sphere has the surface area of 144 pi. Find the diameter. So they're calling for the surface area formula for a sphere, which is 4 pi r squared. They told us that the surface area is 144 pi, so that can go in for S. And now our job is to solve for the radius. Because if we have the radius, we can double it to get the diameter. So we're going to divide by 4 pi on both sides. We get r squared. If you divide by 4 here, 144 divided by 4 is 36. Taking the square root on both sides, the radius is 6, which makes the diameter equal to 12. Now, they didn't give us units here, so our answer doesn't have units. We don't know if it was inches or feet or yards or centimeters, so we can leave the answer without any units. Number 4 says a sphere has a surface area of 520 centimeters squared. It says find the length of the radius. Round your answer to the nearest tenth of a centimeter. So the sphere's surface area formula is 4 pi r squared. And we know the surface area is 520. So from here we can find the length of the radius. we have to solve algebraically for r. So the first thing we're going to do is this 4 pi times r squared needs to go away. So we're going to divide both sides by 4 pi. So we get r squared is equal to, in the calculator we have to be very careful. We have to do 520 divided by, 520 divided by parentheses 4 pi. And we're not going to round until the end, so we're going to write 41.3802852. 41.3802852. And now to find the radius, we take the square root of both sides. So we're going to take the square root of that answer, and we're going to round this to the nearest tenth, which would round to 6.4, and the units would be centimeters. Well, this is all stuff that we've done, which is why this is a good video lesson, because it's not anything really new, it's just different formulas. Number 5 says if the surface area of a sphere is 144 pi, they would like us to find the volume of the sphere in terms of pi. So the surface area is 4 pi r squared, and the volume formula is 4/3 pi r cubed. So the surface area is 144 pi. So we'll start off with that equation, and we can isolate r just as we did before. And if you remember, we actually did this problem. We divided by 4 pi. We got r squared to be 36. Taking the square root, r is 6. Now, if r is 6, I can easily get the volume by coming over to the volume formula and plugging it in. So plug in the radius in. So we get 4/3 pi times 6 cubed. And we can leave this answer in terms of pi, so we're going to multiply everything except the pi, which if you notice, we've already done this problem too. So it's just a combination of doing the, whoops, this calculator is not working right. Here we go. 4/3 times 6 cubed. And we get 288 pi, which we already knew. So it's kind of a combination, and there are no units attached to this because they didn't give us any units to start with. Number 6, a little different. The sphere has a volume of 324 pi. We would like to find the surface area to the nearest tenth. So the volume of the sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed, and the surface area formula is 4 pi r squared. So volume, we're just going to start with because they gave us the volume, which is 324 pi equals 4/3 pi r cubed. And from this formula, we can get the radius, which we can then plug into the surface area formula and get an answer. So first things first, we need to get r cubed by itself. So a couple of things you can do here. First of all, if you divide both sides by pi, the pi's will cancel. So I'm going to do that automatically. The second thing we can do is if I want to get rid of a fraction being multiplied, one thing we can do very easily is multiply by its reciprocal, which is 3/4. And that will cancel the 4 and it will cancel the 3, and r cubed will be left. On the left-hand side, we can do 3/4 3/4 times 324, and that equals 243. Now, a new little device that we have not seen yet. If I wanted to solve the equation, for example, 81 equals r squared, I would take the square root of both sides, and I would get 9. So when I want to undo a cube, we do something called the cube root. And we write a little 3 to signify it's not a square root anymore, it's a cube root. And this will be the number that when I multiply it by itself 3 times, I will get 243. On the calculator, this function is found under math. If you hit the math key, and then if you go to 4, option 4, you will see it has the cube root. So this is the cube root of 243. Oopsie. And the answer is 6.240251469. So it didn't come out like a decimal. Sorry, it didn't come out as a whole number. We have to write the whole thing down. 6.240251469. Whoopsie. Now, why is that the answer? Well, let's think about something for a moment. If I took that number and multiplied it by itself, and then multiplied it by itself again, so I'm doing the answer times the answer times the answer, we get the value 243, which is exactly the cube. That's the whole point of the cube root. Okay. Oops, I'm realizing I forgot a 1 here. Okay. Now we can find the surface area of the sphere. The surface area is 4 pi times that radius. You have to use the whole thing, 6.240251469 squared. And we want it to the nearest tenth, so we can leave pi in the answer. So we have 4 pi times 6.240251469 squared. And we're rounding this to the nearest tenth, so the answer would be 489.3. And we don't know the units. They didn't give us units. But for example, if they gave us, this was cubic inches, this is an area, so it would be square inches. Okay? All right, number 7. We have a cylindrical can with 3 tennis balls. We've all seen this probably. The diameter of each ball is 6 centimeters. The tennis balls fit snugly against the interior of the can. That means that these tennis balls are touching the interior of the can and against the top and the bottom, so they fit perfectly in the can. Okay. It says, how many cubic centimeters of empty space are there in the can? Express your answer in terms of pi. Well, the can is a cylinder. Okay. So we can think of the volume, figure out what the volume of the cylinder is, because that's the entire can. And then we can figure out the volume of the tennis balls in the can. And if we took the volume of the cylinder and subtracted it from the volume of the tennis balls, we would figure out the empty space that's in the can. So the volume of a cylinder, or of the can, is pi r squared h. Now the diameter of the tennis ball is 6. So that means the radius is 3. But that radius is also identical to the radius of the can, or the radius of the cylinder. Okay, so that 3 can be plugged into this formula. Now the height is a little interesting. We know the diameter of the tennis ball is 6, so if we looked at it this way, this would be 6, and then this tennis ball would be another 6, and then this tennis ball would be another 6. So 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18. So the height of the can is actually 18. Okay, so I'm going to leave this in terms of pi, because they told us to leave it in terms of pi. The volume of the can would be, where's the calculator not popping up? There we go. The volume of the can would be 3 squared, 3 squared times 18, 162 pi. Now the volume of the tennis balls, well, the volume of one tennis ball, since the sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed, and since we said the radius was 3, okay, we can type in 4/3 times 3 cubed and 36 pi is the volume of one tennis ball. Okay, we have 3 though, so 36 pi times 3 is 108 pi. This would be all 3 tennis balls. So if the whole can contains 162 pi, and the volume of all 3 tennis balls is 108 pi, we can subtract them to get the volume of empty space. And it's just like doing 162x minus 108x. The pi stays in the answer, and 162 minus 108 would give us 54 pi. So there is 54 pi cubic centimeters. Why isn't it writing? 54 pi, sorry, Smartboard just kind of went berserk on me, cubic centimeters of empty space in the can. And there's your final answer. So your assignment tonight is to do these questions, okay? And use the video as a guide. And if you have any questions, please email me.